Konnichiwa.
And howdy, y'all.
I'm Leslie.
I'm Laurie. Welcome to
Sumo Kaboom, where we talk about all things sumo.
That's right. And because the Bonsuke came out last week, we're not talking about that all this much this week because we wanted to talk about something else. Our newbies on the Bonsuke.
Yeah, we're doing 2 out of 3.
Yeah, so sorry. We'll give you the third one next week.
The other one.
Yes, but this week,
I think it's
newbies,
Shona Naomi, as I think the other guy. I don't even know the other guy's name.
We have lots to look up.
We do.
Yeah, but this week, I'm going to talk about Ochiai, who is now Hakuoho, who is brand new at the very bottom of the Bonsuke, but people are so excited about this kid. I'm going to tell you why. There's a lot to learn about this kid. Expectations are big, and so you need to know a little bit more about him before you see him.
Right.
And his incredibly muscular legs.
Right. And I'm going to talk about Gonoyama, who... Every time I hear the name, I think about gonorrhea, but...
Well, now I'll remember him forever. All I'm going to think of now.
I'm so sorry, but he is a badass wrestler,
It's
so...
kind of like the Kagayaki poop squat. Once I saw that, I could not unsee it. Now, this is going to be the same way.
Well, I don't know. I'll tell you what his original name was, and then maybe you can kind of think of that every time you see him.
I need a palate cleanser. Do you have a news flash?
I do. How about a news flash? Well, little Koto Shoho, he revealed, a month and a half or 2 months ago that he was engaged. Well, surprise, they have now submitted their marriage registration on the 3rd, and now double surprise, they're going to have a baby in November.
Good for them.
Yes. So I actually can't remember how old he is. I don't know. Maybe he's 25, 23. To me, he seems like he's got to be 21, Koto Shoho, but he is going to be a father. So he is stepping right into that sumo world where you get married and you immediately have children.
Yeah. Did you do the math?
Wait, on what?
Let's see, the child...
Oh, why they got engaged?
Yes.
Well, yeah, they always do it a little backwards than we do here in America. We usually do the engagement and the marriage and then the baby. But it seems there that they do the baby, the engagement, and then the marriage. And the marriage can come 2 years later.
Got it.
I mean, as all these other guys have gotten married 2 or 3 years after they've got 4 kids. And they're like, we finally got around to getting married. So they do it a little different in Japan. And I like that. He is not living with her yet. In July, they move in together and then have a baby in November. So I expect...
Well, he's been there at some point.
Well, clearly. Clearly. They figured out how to be together somehow.
Somewhere.
Maybe it's one of those Japanese love hotels.
Maybe.
Didn't we talk about the love hotels?
Maybe.
Yeah, it's a little romantic getaway that they have all over Japan that you and your lover can go meet up at, and then you have a little escapade. Anyway, we're not even talking about the news, but whatever. Look up Japanese love hotels. Very fascinating. But I predict he will have a terrible September.
Okay.
Basho.
Because
all of a sudden he will be like, I've got a wife, I'm living with her, she's about to have a baby. And then I predict in November he will win the Yusho because he'll have a new baby.
Okay.
And he's going to win the whole Yusho for the baby. So I expect big changes in his life. We'll see if his record shows that. Another fun piece of information we all learned about is this week it was revealed that Tochinoshin has a Twitter profile for his gorgeous poodle. Her name is Angela. And we had a number of people be like, do you know about this? Do you know about this?
And I have to say, I didn't know about it until people put it right in front of me, and I'm a little obsessed now.
I am too. This is exactly the sumo content we crave. And
it's not a small poodle, y'all.
No. She kind of looks to me kind of like a Russian mail order bride. Like she has that vibe.
She's not the kind of dog I would have pictured for Tochinoshin.
But then again,
she's a high maintenance.
Yeah, I mean,
mail
she is
order bride
coiffed.
dog.
She is coiffed. Her hair is done every day. She's gorgeous. She's well trained.
Like, this is what the pictures are.
Yeah, but she sits around in the lap of luxury. This gorgeous, beautifully manicured poodle with red hair, and she just sits around a house all day and just loafs. And then
it finally made sense to me why Tochinoshin never goes home to see his wife and child, because he's taking care of this poodle.
Or maybe the poodle Angela lives with the whole family. I sense though that Angela might, the fact that her name is Angela anyway is like so kind of perfect.
Yeah.
But I was just like, this is a whole other lady in the mix here. But anyway, I'm in love with Angela. I'm in love with Tochinoshin, who loves and adores Angela. Very highbrow, high status dog. It's very interesting. Also, did you get the on another interesting sumo email that came our way? We got someone who tipped us off to the imaginary sumo match for rice, like a rice festival.
Yeah, I think you need to share this.
Well, I looked at it because I was like, what the heck is this? Basically, it's this town who has a rice festival. To honor the gods, they have a sumo match, but it's one wrestler versus an imaginary wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
The god.
Surely.
And whoever wins, it's for the benefit of the rice.
Yeah, does the human ever win?
I thought it did, but...
Does the human or the god win?
I didn't get that part because I was just looking at the photos, which is just a guy who's doing, it's kind of like air guitar, but it's like sumo match. Like it's imaginary sumo match. I mean, his face is pained. Like he clearly has a grab on the belt. He's got a good mawashi grab on the imaginary sumo wrestler he's wrestling. And I just was drawn into his face where he's all like, oh, and the crowds are like, yay, he's winning against the sumo god of rice. So,
there is video of it. I did watch.
I didn't watch it. I just looked at the pictures and I was like, this is like too much in the most perfect way. And that's why I love the Japanese culture. I just love the Japanese. They've got so many quirky, fun, interesting, historical things going on. It's just around every corner you can learn something new. So that I am all in for all of these. I mean, from the Star Trek outfits, the pink Star Trek outfits where they throw out the magical beans, to the baby crying. It's just one cool thing after another.
To the bull sumo.
Oh, yeah, bull sumo. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but moving on to more news within our sumo world. There was a really neat piece in, a number of pieces in Nikon Sports, and they interviewed all of the oyakatas who were at Ozeki. And because right now we have this, everyone's talking about these 3 guys that are going into this next tournament shooting for Ozeki, to be promoted to Ozeki. And so they did like a really neat little feature on each one of these coaches about how they felt going into their Ozeki tournament where they were going to be promoted, and they all did. And so it's like Ozeki Onaruto, Ozeki Kayo, Chio Taikai, Koto Oshu, all of these guys are oyakatas of stables now, but it was really kind of interesting. Some of them say it's all mind, and then other guys were like it's all body, and then Chio Taikai was like it was all my fortune teller who told me the morning of that I was going to become Ozeki, and the prophecy came true. So it's just interesting to see how all the coaches felt and all of these guys going into it, what their brains might be, and it's also varied, so who knows. But
can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Fortune teller?
Yeah. He literally went to a fortune teller and was like, can you tell me what my future is going to be? Am I going to become an Ozeki? And the fortune teller was like, yep, you are.
Okay, but before that fortune teller gave that answer, he or she was like, oh, their future rests in whatever I'm going to tell them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he went in specifically and was like, do you think I'm going to become an Ozeki? I imagine that the coach was like, hey, look, I know you do fortune telling, but it would be really, really helpful if you were like giving some positive spin on this.
Exactly. He's 7'7". He just needs a little push in the right direction. That's all he needs.
Right. So it worked because this is the Kokonoe stable oyakata. That's Chio Taikai. And the prophecy did come true.
Yeah.
Also, a couple of things that have been happening leading up to this tournament is that we get to see everyone fighting everyone, and everything in the news is like who's sparring prior to this Nagoya Basho. And Asanoyama has been front and center because he has been very vocal about He's clearly aiming for Sanyaku. He's clearly aiming for higher than that again. And he is like, all I want to be is a wall for all of these guys that are shooting to become Ozeki, because, I mean, they came up in sumo school with him. So they're all somebody, that he's competing with. So
it's exciting to have so many guys be on the cusp of Ozeki.
Yeah.
All at the same time.
It seems like everything's a buzz.
Yeah.
Everything's a buzz in sumo right now.
Yeah, there's just been so much change at the very top of the pyramid. And I don't feel like that's happened quite the way it's happening now.
Right.
In a long, long time.
Yeah.
So it's really exciting.
It is. And that is all I've got. Okay, we are going to do a little highlight feature on 2 out of the 3 new guys that are coming into Makuuchi. Gonoyama, a highlight on Gonoyama, a highlight on Ochiai, also known as Hakuoho, and then the other guy, I think Shona no Umi, which I've seen some pictures of, but everybody's more excited about these other 2 guys than this other poor kid. But we'll get to him. I'm sure he's going to be awesome as well, but we will get to him perhaps next week. But first, let's start with Gonoyama. His real name is Toki, good old Toki.
I like that, Toki.
Toki Nishikawa, and he's 25 years old. He was born in 98, and he currently wrestles for Takakuma Stable and is making his Makuuchi debut at M13. Now this highlight...
That's really high.
Yeah. This highlight is a bit more... It's more than just Gonoyama's background. I think it's a little bit more on a new stable and a new oyakata. And that's kind of what's going on at the same time as Gonoyama's success, is actually a familiar face to many of us. And that's his oyakata, who is former Ozeki Goeido, also known now as Takakuma Oyakata.
Which sounds like a cat.
It does. It does.
Goeido, who is now a cat. Japanese cat. Okay. In my brain. Yeah.
Okay, so Gonoyama is from Osaka originally, the same exact hometown as Goeido. Both went to the very sumo, like fancy sumo elite school, the Saitama High School. So I guess that's also why they have this connection. And of course, now Gonoyama is part of Goeido's stable. About the Takakuma stable, though, Goeido retired, as some of you may remember. Some of you are newer to sumo. You may not really remember him, but he retired a couple of years ago, January 2020, as he fell from the Ozeki rank. Now, Goeido said that at the time he would rather retire on the top than lose rank. So some of these guys we see now, like Takayasu, and we saw Kota Shogoku before do the same thing. They fell out of the rank and then they kept wrestling for many years. And Goeido and Shodai. But Goeido was somebody who was like, no, if I fall from rank, I will retire. And
he was there for a long time.
He spent 33 tournaments at Ozeki.
That's incredible.
That is amazing. So the last tournament he was Kataban, and he did just exactly that. When he wasn't going to turn in the numbers, he decided to peace out and retire. He's a proud man, and you can kind of tell from his strong convictions. He was going to go out on top. He was a great wrestler, and just due to, injuries and the normal life cycle of an active wrestler in the sport, he quit, But 33 tournaments as Ozeki.
Yeah, that's more than 5 years. More than 5 years.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that really is jaw-dropping because it's such a pressure-filled, place to be. Everyone's coming at you. You have to be top of form. And he held it for that long.
Yeah, and you're fighting all the best men all the time.
All the time. So his retirement was during, as many of us remember recently, the COVID crisis. And he had to wait actually 2 years to have his official haircutting ceremony. And it was supposed to be held, I think, about the next year, but it just kept getting postponed. And apparently it didn't go the way he wanted. He just wanted to get it done because he was ready to get on with his chapter 2 in his sumo life. And apparently I think the powers that be were dictating to him when all of that could happen. And he was not going to be approved to have his new stable until he was closer to that actual ceremony. So he retired, and then he kind of sat there for a year getting everything kind of ready. And then it couldn't happen and he had to stall around. And so by the time he finally had his hair cutting ceremony 2 years later, he, prior to that, got approved to have his stable. And at that point, he was like, thank goodness, I am ready to go. I think he was very annoyed and he was kind of verbal about like, well, it went the way it went and could have gone a different way, but that's the way it went. And so he had this delay kind of squash some of that momentum, and you could just tell he was ready to move into that next chapter and just really go hard. So once that finally happened, when he got the approval, he started his own little sumo stable called Takakuma. And when he was at Sakagawa, he was able to take some wrestlers with him. Now, Gonoyama, at the time, Nishikawa, he had joined professional sumo and had joined into the Sakagawa stable. And so with him, he took him, and I think he had maybe 6 other wrestlers. And he went far out of town, Goeido did, found like a space where there's a dojo in the basement and the guys are on the 4th floor. It's above a restaurant. It is nothing fancy. It's nowhere close to Ryogoku, where all the other sumo stables are. He just was like, let's go. I don't care. I'll worry about that stuff later. Let's go, go, go. So that officially opened in February of 2022, which you think about is just barely over a year. Mm-hmm. Okay. So since then, he put all of his focus into this Nishikawa kid. And he knew he had a connection because they both came from the same hometown, which is Osaka. But he had stated about Gonoyama at that point, he was a kid who had incredible power, great power, a sturdy frame, and is sort of unshakable. So it kind of gave me an idea of like how Gonoyama is coming into this spot at M13 and how after the last tournament, all the focus has been on Ochi, but there's been this other kid who has benefited from a very excited coach who's put all of his focus into him. So Nishikawa, or Gonoyama, joined sumo in 2021. And so he's barely over 2 years. And like I said, he went to Sakagawa, which is the stable that other big guys are at. Sadanoumi, Hiradoumi, and Myogaru.
But this kid started at the very bottom, yes?
Well, no, he went... I'll tell you a little bit about his background and where he came up through college and everything. But he came after college, joining pro sumo. So he joined up to a big sumo stable. So I can kind of understand why you would want to go to a big sumo stable like that. But if you're a young kid at that stable, you may not get to fight. You know, practice, and for you're not going to necessarily get to maybe fight with those big guys all the time. You're going to maybe learn from them. But it made me question in my mind, what is the better opportunity, to be at a big sumo stable where you've got other big guns, or to leave that stable, be transferred out with Goeido, have 6 people to spar with. They're not high ranked, but all you've got is your one Ozeki, former Ozeki who knows the current field because he's retired so recently, and all of his focus on you. And it was just kind of an interesting kind of thought, is like, I don't know if the kid had a choice to go with Goeido, or if Goeido was just like, I'm taking these kids, and it was agreed upon between Goeido and the Oyakata who he could take and transfer out with him. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Nishikawa went with Goeido, and I think he's done pretty darn well. So a little bit, though, about where he's really from. Again, Osaka. He started out like so many of these other kids, really young, started out in like kindergarten or 1st grade because his parents were like, you need to find a sport. And so he found himself in sumo, and he participated in the Wanpaku and the All Japan tournaments. And those are only for elementary school kids. And he participated in all of those from like 4th to 6th grade. When he was little, he went to go and visit the Sakagawa stable. And so he was very impressed with it. So from a very early age, he was like, I want to be a sumo wrestler and I want to go to that stable. And he particularly idolized Goeido because Goeido was there when he was a little kid. So he actually trained growing up with Takakeisho, and who was, I think, 2 years older. So when Nishikawa, Gonoyama, was going up through junior high, Takakeisho was 2 years older, and he was like, I'm going to go follow Takakeisho to Saitama High, which is one of the bigger sumo high schools.
It's not Sweet Totori High.
It's not Sweet Totori High.
But it's still nice.
Yeah, it's Saitama High School.
Okay.
And Also, another fun fact, he trained with Ura back then too. So he went to all through junior high and high school, but he opted to go to college and he studied law. So he graduated college and then he finally joined pro sumo. So he's known a lot of these guys that we are seeing these days, but he just chose to stay in school for longer and practice and be on the college teams. And in college, he did very well as well. He was in the national sumo championships. He was the captain of the team. He won first runner-up at the national student championship, and he qualified after those wins to start somewhere in Sandame. So he didn't get the Makushita jump, but he got to start not down in Jonidan and Jonokuchi. He got to start in Sandame.
Okay, so pretty well good enough at tournaments to have a slightly advanced start.
Exactly. If you look at his record since starting pro sumo just over 2 years ago, he has only had 2 makikoshi records. And I think one of those was a neck injury. So actually only one was a 6-9 record. All the others were kachikoshi. Once he came back from that neck injury, he came back and won 7-0 and won.
It's neck training.
It's one Makushita Yusho.
All about neck training.
It is. Well, I mean, you have to. It is so dangerous.
Yeah, I want him to. Yeah. Please train your necks.
So he has a Makushita Yusho win. And if you remember most recently, all eyes were on Ochiai. And he and Ochiai went into the final day both with 14-1 records.
This is in Juryo.
Last
Basho.
Yeah. Yes. And he basically spent a year in Makushita, a year in Juryo. And
that is interesting. So today we are talking about the 2 guys that were in the playoff in Juryo last Basho for the Juryo Basho win. Yeah. Somehow I sort of knew it, but I hadn't. We should have just started this episode with that. Like, we're talking about the 2 guys that were in the playoff for the Juryo Basho.
Well, and I think that has something to do with Ochiai's kind of publicity focus these days. Gonoyama didn't really get that focus because he's Goeido's disciple and Goeido's got a new stable and you're not expecting great things out of Goeido yet, but everyone's expecting great things out of Hakuoho.
Well, but who won the playoff?
Exactly. Gonoyama.
Yeah.
And so you have to remember, Ochiai is enormous and big. Gonoyama's actually 5'8", so he's shorter than his, shorter than Goeido, but similarly built. He's like 360 pounds. And I think Ochiai is, I'm not sure, I thought a little bit bigger. So everybody going into this match was like, Ochiai is going to win this. And Gonoyama did. And he's been fighting like a beast. So when he won
it right at the Tachiai.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And he is mostly a pusher thruster.
Mm-hmm. Now that you say that, like when I'm thinking about, actually both their styles are quite similar to, the look that Goeido had when he was fighting. It was it's all forehead.
Yeah.
And like, I'm going to stare you down with my forehead. Mm-hmm. Both of these guys have that game down.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, when I look at Gonoyama, I see Goeido's face.
Yes.
Which makes sense for the kid who's idolized him.
Yeah.
That's now his coach. So they seem to have a huge connection. And in all of the the publicity that's come out this week about Gonoyama, Goeido, I'm sure, is saying to Gonoyama, I mean, he's gone to spar with Terena Fuji. So I don't know if that happens every day where a coach can be like, excuse me, Yokozuna, would you mind sparring with my M13? I think there's got to be a connection with Goeido, with the other guys, because Oho is also credited as giving really great, he was sparring with Gonoyama, getting him ready for Makauchi. So there's a lot of guys behind the scenes that seem to be kind of working with him. And I don't know if that's Goeido's connection or if that's just they like what they're seeing. But when you look at his body type, again, he's 5'8", and he's not as big as Takakeisho. He's like 360. So he wins 50% of his battles with Oshidashi and 14 Yorikiri, 9% Tsukiotoshi, and 29% other. So there's got to be some magic, or we've got a new coach who's proving himself, and he's got one extremely promising disciple who is turning out to be spectacular. Yeah. Oh, his blood type is B. That's important.
Outgoing.
Yeah.
Creative type. He probably goes to a fortune teller.
He might. He just might.
I don't know if Goeido's, behind such things. I don't know.
I would have a feeling Goeido wouldn't be.
That would be my initial thought. Maybe
the sumo world's a mysterious place. Who knows?
It is. You never know.
Another kind of interesting thing, though, is that Goeido also has another kid that he has scouted, which I think is the hard part about coaching, is that you have to scout good kids. He also has another kid that was like the runner-up to Sumo Person of the Year in college, whatever it's called. I can't remember. I can't remember what it's called. But
SPOOTY.
Yeah, like
Spody. Sumo Person of the Year. You're the Spody for 2023.
Sumo's Amateur Wrestler of the Year competition.
I like Spody better.
Yeah, I like Spody, but his real name is Taiga Kanzaki. But he has a couple other kids that he has cherry picked out of, and he's
Sakura picked.
Yes, Sakura picked. He got Sakura picked, but he's got a couple of promising young guys and 6 kids that he's putting all of his focus into.
So my takeaway is Goeido is a great coach.
There is something he's trying to prove straight out of the gate. Yeah. And he's giving as much of his heart to coaching as this kid is to proving himself to his master. And there's some sort of beautiful connection between disciple and master.
Got it. And Gonoyama.
Which actually means maybe this will help.
You can't put that in my brain and expect it not to live there.
His name.
Gono.
Yeah, his name, his shokona, upon entering Juryo, was given to him by Goeido. So he shares the same
It's not ga.
No, go. And it means strongly climb the mountain and shine.
Go.
Shiny
no
mountain.
Yama. Go. No Yama.
Go tell it on the mountain. Go shine on the mountain.
Tell it on the Yama.
Yep. So maybe that'll help.
All right. Gonoyama. Great.
Gonoyama.
I am going to talk about the other guy that was in the playoff for the Juryo Championship last time that didn't win the Juryo Championship, but he's still going to be in this top division. And he's in the last spot. Making sure 17. But, oh my Lord, the world cannot stop talking about this kid. And now I understand.
I've watched enough clips, though. I mean, he's like a little demon.
Yes. Okay. His name, Hakuoho, is how you will recognize him in the top division. Hakuoho Tetsuya. I don't know where the emphasis goes in there. We'll figure all this out. Okay. He used to be known as Ochi. So you're going to hear.
Which Laurie and I both preferred, but no one asked us.
No one asked us. We much prefer Ochi,
but whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
And I also preferred Nishikawa over Gonoyama, but again, no one asked us.
Wish they did. Okay. One of the reasons people are so excited about this kid, Hakuoho, is that he's not 20 years old, y'all. When he shows up in this top division, he's still going to be 19.
Wow.
19 years old. And okay, so maybe you're like, oh yeah, he's just a really talented 19-year-old skinny kid. Oh no. He is all muscle.
Yeah.
This kid is huge.
Right.
He's not as tall as some of them. He's almost 6 foot tall. He's 5'11" and a half. So that's 1.81 meters tall, but he weighs about 360 pounds.
Right.
So about 162 kilograms. But mostly when you look at him, you're going to be amazed by his legs. I'm going to tell you automatically. His legs, he's got the most muscular set of legs that do not belong to a 19-year-old.
Right.
They look like they belong to someone who's been doing sumo for 20 years.
Right.
And he's not 20 years old. No. So he is tall, he's wide, he's much wider than Hakuoho is, and Hakuoho is his oyakata.
Right.
That's why his name sounds like Hakuoho. I'm going to tell you more about that. But so he's just big.
That's why everyone's watching this kid, is the potential and the youth and what he's naturally got.
Well, yeah, and I'm just going to tell you more about those natural skills, y'all. But first, I have to make an apology because, when we talked about him last week, I think I misunderstood what you were saying, or maybe we're confused. I thought you were saying last week that this kid, Hakuoho, had made it through Juryo in only one basho. And that's not the case. He made it 2 juryo
in one
basho.
Oh, okay.
So he was not quite as fast as we were thinking, but he kind of is.
Right.
So what's weird about this kid is if you look up his history, if you go to the sumo database, he only has 3 bashos that show up. Only 3. And here he is in the top division. Most everyone else that you look up, they'll have like, I mean, lines and lines and lines of info on all their history of them getting up to this point. But what makes this kid so unusual is he's only been in 3 basho, y'all. And that is incredible.
So 1 in Makushita, 2 in Juryo.
Yes, 1 in Makushita, and he didn't lose at all.
Right.
And he came in at such a high rank without a loss. That bopped him up into Juryo. So he's been in Juryo twice.
Right.
So that's... people are excited because of that.
Right.
That's highly unusual.
Which is still the fastest in 90 years or something nuts like that. It's like the fastest rise.
Well, it's the fastest rise to Juryo.
Right.
In 90 years.
Right. But he did start halfway through Makushita, so.
Yeah, so he had a big head start, and I'm going to tell you why. But really, the big question is not really, is he strong enough? Is he good enough? Is he fast enough? Because he has all those things. The big question is, will his hair be long enough to put in the top knot? That is really the question that we're all wondering about.
It'll be an Ichinojo deal where Ichinojo had a full-on mullet when he joined.
So this kid might as well, because he hasn't had the time to grow it out.
No, he will have a mullet.
We'll find out. That's really
I wish they would give him a teeny tiny little ponytail, but then they look kind of like a trucker or something. So they just give him a slicked mullet.
Yeah, slicked back mullet.
Or like a Richard Gere from the 80s kind of hairstyle.
So there is a lot written about this kid in English, but it tells you nothing about his personality. So I had to go to the Japanese websites, which are always way more interesting, y'all. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who he is, and not just the numbers, because the numbers are exciting. There is a reason for people to be excited about his numbers, but his personality is really what interests me. So we got to go all the way back to the beginning, and I have to let you know that this kid grew up. He was the youngest of 3 brothers. He's the baby.
Okay.
Like you.
Like me.
Yep.
So that's real survival techniques.
Yep. He grew up watching sumo with his grandparents.
Okay.
As you do.
As you do.
And enjoying enka.
Oh, the folk singing.
Yes, loved traditional folk singing. He was a soccer kid, loved playing soccer. He was a forward and he was a goalie, which shows that even in Japan, they're really used to like shuttling their kids around in every position on the field. And they're like, you should try it all.
I did play goalie and forward, so I have something in common with him.
You are just like him.
I'm just like Ochiai.
That is right. All of his teachers say that as a kid, he was super kind and he loved choir.
Okay, we have so much in common.
Right? He was... This is a quote, and I'm not exactly
baritone,
sure.
A tenor?
Well, I'm not sure exactly.
A barytenor?
But
a contralto?
The quote about him is, quote, he was adored by the chorus competition.
I mean, he's got to be the biggest chorus member up there. All those little tuxes, and then there's one kid in a tuxedo. I'm in love.
He's not exactly like Tsurugisho in that, like, Tsurugisho was the same size his entire life, just about. And he had a dad who was really into judo, and his dad really wanted at least one of his boys to do some sort of martial art. And so he was trying to get them to do things. And, all of his brothers sort of competed in this Cherry Festival sumo tournament every year just for fun. Mm-hmm. And so when he got to be in like the 4th grade of elementary school, he was like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll try it. I've never done it. And he got in there and he said it was really scary. Would sometimes run away from practice and cry in the corner because it was scary. It wasn't really his thing.
And sing songs to himself.
Right.
And wish he was in choir.
Perhaps.
I'm a choir boy, everyone.
I want to sing. I don't want to do this violent thing. And then at some point, his older brothers, not really him, but his older brothers would get involved in this Cherry Blossom sumo tournament.
Okay.
And so he put it off for many years. And then finally, when he was in 4th grade, he was like, okay, I'll do this sumo tournament. Even though I still think it's scary, I'm going to do it. So in the 4th year of his primary school, he got involved in this tournament and won.
He just won?
Surprised everyone. Surprised him as well. And then his dad said, oh, okay, this kid might be my martial arts kid. And so he signed his youngest up to study sumo, and they would take a 1-hour trip each way to study sumo. And even though he was sort of intrigued by sumo, he still really hated the sumo training and was not that into it. He was probably like, soccer and singing are for me, Dad. But his dad would not let him quit sumo.
Okay.
So I think of it kind of like
we have
piano practice.
Not as a like stage parent, or it's a sumo parent.
Yeah, who is like, you're going to do this. You may not like it now.
I'm living vicariously through you.
There's a reason. We all don't love our martial arts training, but there's a reason this is the way.
Right. Okay.
I'm sure that's what he did. Okay, so again, he's in elementary school here, and his dad signs him up for a training sumo camp. And who's the kid they bring in to teach 4th graders sumo? Ichinojo.
What?
Who's...
Is this when Ichinojo took his break after he had a little break where he went and taught kids?
Maybe. Ichinojo was in high school at this point.
Okay.
And they brought him in to teach these little 4th graders.
Okay.
And so this little 4th grader goes up against Ichinojo and was, again, terrified. And was like, I cannot believe how large this man is, and could not move Ichinojo at all. This kid, he's quoted as saying, I couldn't push Ichinojo at all. Didn't work at all. He was so darn heavy and still very scary. So went to the sumo camp that he didn't really love. Oh, it's in 5th grade that he won. Okay. So I made a mistake. He didn't win the sumo tournament in 4th grade. He won it in 5th grade.
Okay.
So in 4th grade, he must have shown up and was like, haha, I did it with my brother. And his dad was like, okay, you are now studying the sumo. Okay, went to the sumo camp, blah, blah, blah. So he finally won the thing in 5th grade.
Okay.
And that kid was much bigger than him. And when he beat that kid in 5th grade, then he was hooked. Then he was like, oh, now I'm glad that Dad has been forcing me to go to sumo, because now I get it. I can be smaller and I can still beat bigger, heavier kids. Oh my God. And then he was in 100%. And when it got to 6th grade elementary school, he even devised a school lunch menu called the Yokozuna-san School Lunch that incorporated sumo dishes at school, all these different chankos and different foods, like all of these sumo foods that kids should eat. And the menu won first prize at a contest, and it is still being offered at his elementary school. So he got the kids at his elementary school eating sumo food.
That is adorable,
right? Isn't that pretty cute?
He's a little go-getter.
He is. I
would not be surprised if he was like class president. I mean, he seems very much like very, very smart with a kid.
Yes. So he went to Totori High School.
Sweet Totori High.
Yep. And this is when, people started really noticing this kid, because he won the title of High School Yokozuna in his 2nd and 3rd year.
Wow. He
won the title of High School Yokozuna. And his 3rd year in high school, so he's gotten real good. Good. In his 3rd year, he was ranked in the top 8 at the All Japan Championships. And this alone, right out of high school, gets you a higher start in the ranks. It doesn't get you to Makushita 15, but if you were to enter pro sumo after high school, being in the top 8 of that national division, you get to start at the lowest rank in the 3rd tier. So the bottom rank, Makushita, is where you would start. Okay? He turned that spot down. And this is where the rumors started to fly about this kid. And there are tons of rumors out there, and I cannot find the true story. So I'll give you the official story that he gives the press now. Okay? Again, lots of gossip about what these reasons are really. But we know factually that he turned that spot down and decided to have surgery on his shoulder instead. He had an injured shoulder, and so he decided to get that fixed. So he took about a year off after high school, after doing very well in his last 2 years of high school, to get his shoulder fixed. this is where you need to insert a montage in your mind, a training montage.
Rocky training montage.
Of him getting his shoulder fixed and then going to work at his dad's metal factory and lifting heavy metal objects.
This is just like Flashdance.
Yes. And like sparks flying in the background, working at his father's metalwork machinery company.
He's a maniac.
Yes.
Maniac on the floor.
That's
Isn't that
right.
what they say? On the floor?
For this story.
He's a maniac on the doyo.
Lifting forevermore. That is right. And he's pushing like he's never pushed before. That is right. So he spent a year.
Like he's never. Okay, well, we're going to have to work on this.
We're going to workshop it.
Spoof of Maniac.
As far as I can tell, he did not go to college.
He would have had to have been a Doogie Howser. We're like throwing out a bunch of 80s references.
We are.
Sorry to anyone who is not. I mean, anyone who's under 40, I don't think they know Doogie Howser or Maniac, but whatevs.
Okay, so after the montage, post-surgery, post-montage, he decides to get back into the sumo world, and he won the All Japan Corporate Sumo Championship in September of 2022.
So he won that for like the steel factory work or whatever.
Yes. Thus being named Corporate Yokozuna. So here's what I learned. Corporate Yokozuna. Remember we had that question?
Yeah, we've talked about it. Somebody else was like Corporate Yokozuna.
Yes. So it just means that they won the All Japan Sumo Championship. And
it's the working man's sumo tournament.
It's the amateur sumo tournament that's being sponsored by businesses is really what it is.
Right. But I like this. I like this idea that in Japan, they have somebody from the cookery school as like a sumo person. They have somebody from the shipyards. They have somebody from the welding building. Like that they're all corporate Yokozunas. Because they have some accounting firm that's got like a representative who's going to sumo wrestle.
So that was our joke when we were talking about it. Yes. But what I know now is if you win this, it's like the highest...
It's a big deal.
The most prestigious amateur Yokozuna, or the most prestigious amateur sumo tournament in Japan. If you win it and you become that Yokozuna, that's where you start from Makushita 15. If you're in the top 8, then you start at the bottom of Makushita. But if you win it, you start at Makushita 15.
Interesting.
And so that is what this kid did. He was in the top 8. This is where the gossip starts to fly. Why would he not take it? Rah, 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 rah. But he took the time off, got his shoulder fixed, and got the win so that he could come in at the prime spot, the best spot that you can possibly get at Makushita 15.
Side note, I imagine when you're wrestling as a corporate Yokozuna, you're in a mawashi and then a necktie.
See, this is...
And you mount the doyo with a little briefcase.
See, this is what we remember. Yes. If we just paint images of ourselves, gonorrhea facing this man who's gone through a training montage in a metalwork factory wearing a tie.
And a little briefcase.
Yes.
Yes. With Goedo in the corner, just like the guy from Rocky, Burgess Meredith.
That's right.
He was like cheering him on. And,
Okay, so all of this background is to say, so he's done pretty well. Throughout elementary school, he won Yokozuna titles. Through junior high, he did well. Through high school, 2 years as Yokozuna in high school, takes a little time off, heals himself, comes back, wins the biggest amateur title as Yokozuna. You could see why Hakuoho might be interested in this kid.
Well, I wonder if he was advised by someone like Hakuoho, because it is true, if you join sumo and then you have to have surgery, you'll never actually get to heal properly.
Right.
So if somebody was like, look, you got an injury, you can hold off for a year, train yourself smartly without the pressure of the system and going up and down in the lower ranks.
See, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt, which is great.
But that's not what happened.
Not everyone does that.
Right.
Yes. You're thinking about it very logically, and I like that. So let's just keep that out there on the airwaves. Okay? Right. So he was smart. And after he did that, Hakuoho then said, why don't you come to my stable, Miyagi-no stable? And that's where he started January of this year. He's 19. All of this has happened before January 2023.
Wow.
So he went undefeated in January at Makushita 15. That popped him into Juryo. So, the first wrestler to receive a promotion to Juryo in just one tournament in 90 years. That's where everybody's like, what?
But he did start at Makushita 15. So
exactly.
It was a jump of 15 spots.
Now, because that rise to Juryo was so fast, and then again, he had 2 Dynamite Juryo Basho.
Right.
Here he is in the top division. Hakuoho then went, oh, God, this kid needs a new name. He admitted he had not thought, just wasn't even thinking of a new name for this. And so he was like, Hakuoho. He just added an O.
I had heard that he had offered up his name, and that JSA was like, no.
Well, see, that's even better. He was like, he needs a ring name? Take mine. Take mine. I didn't have time to think about it. So now we know how he got the name Hakuoho. Like, just put an O in your name. Like, you could be Lesoli. That could be your ring name. Lesoli. Yep. Your word works much better than mine. Larioi.
Laoi.
See, it doesn't work. There's too many vowels in mine. But Lesoli works.
Lesoli.
Yeah. So, lightning fast rise. People who watch those sort of lightning fast rises to the top have a lot of negative things to say sometimes about people like that. Sometimes they start to call them, sometimes they get very excited about kids like that, and they call him Monster. And that's how he got the Reiwa Monster.
He's the monster
moniker.
of Reiwa. But he does fight like a little gremlin.
Well, what I find so exciting about his style of sumo is that it's incredibly aggressive. It's incredibly fast.
And he's grounded. He's so very grounded with those legs.
Like I said, his body does not match a 19-year-old. It's very muscular. He's just so big and wide, and he's built like an Ozeki. Yeah. And he has that same sort of aggressive fight all the way to the end that Hakuoho had. And any of those guys at the very top have. He has that, which I think makes him real exciting to watch. Now, let me tell you a little bit more about the man. First of all, he knows how to talk about his goal and what he wants. And let's be honest, he's achieved a lot of his goals.
Right.
So he has high confidence.
He does.
People talk to him about what his goal is, and he's like, I'm to be Yokozuna. That is my goal. That's a tall order. But no one has been set up quite as well as he has.
Right. And sometimes it's that kind of bravado and that kind of confidence that it actually might work.
It really might. He's got a great coach, and he's got great technique. He's doing all the right things, y'all. Hakuoho seems to really like this kid a lot. Hakuoho, there's some great videos out of Hakuoho laughing with this kid and saying, this kid can do a great impression of me, show me. And he does a Hakuoho impression in front of Hakuoho. And it's amazing. It's all about how you should eat salad and not only eat meat. You can't win on just meat, eat salad. And they all think it's hilarious. Because he's got that choir background, he can sing.
He can. He's got an angelic voice.
He loves to sing. He's been listening to enka for his whole life. So he's got a strong musical background that always makes a wrestler twice as exciting in the Collins household.
That's right.
If they can sing, yes. So he likes to train. His hobbies are training and singing. But he's a pretty fast runner. Oh. He can sprint. Really fast. Yeah, he did some track and field as well. Like, his legs are just uber developed, y'all. He really likes the Chronicles of Narnia.
Love him even more.
The Chronicles of Narnia. I love it. He likes meat. He doesn't like shellfish.
Well, he and I also have that in common.
And he really likes animals.
I feel like we need to be best friends with him. I like this kid.
There's a really great video out there of him. It's like they're in. I have no idea.
He's in the ice bath. No,
that one's great.
Was funny.
Yeah, he's got some great video of him in an ice bath,
being tortured in an ice bath in pain. But
I just thought, what is it about young men that always want to tweak each other's nipples? I will never get that.
Is that what they were doing?
Yes.
I guess that's what happens when they're not wrestling. It's just hijinks.
But he's making a speech. Like, they're all in their training gear. He's at his Mawashi, and he's making a speech to a group of older men, and he's crying all the way through it. And I don't know what's being said, But you can tell he's an emotional kid. He's a feeler. He's saying all the right things, but he's a feeler as well. And so that's nice to see.
Yeah.
And I'd love for someone to explain that video to me. Maybe he's talking about the influence of his grandfather, or who knows. I can guess all I want, but I have no idea. But he's just exciting. And it's a super fast rise. And people can't wait to see how he does.
And I mean, this basho with the Ozeki runs up top, with these new kids who seem to be phenoms, it will be interesting to see the dynamics in this next tournament, how it's all going to shake out, who's going to come out on top, knowing that our Yokozuna is also up there and he has to also reign supreme. So lots of things.
Speaking of the next basho, we haven't mentioned it yet, but bingo cards. We'll have our next bingo game open this week. Our bingo cards usually come out the Wednesday or Thursday before each basho begins. So be on the lookout for that. Join us for bingo again. You can win some nice prizes. It's just another fun way to watch the tournament and learn who all these new players are. Get excited about what you're seeing. So we hope you join us in that.
That's right. Until next week, I'm Leslie.
I'm Laurie. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.